try to blow my mind. I don't care.
All right, Peace and Black Power family. So thank you for joining me yet again on another episode of After the Revolution, where we cover Haitian history, Haitian culture, and all things Haitian. All right, so if you're enjoying this channel, you're enjoying these videos, please do not forget to like, comment, also subscribe, and definitely share this information. So today we're going to be touching on one of my arch nemesis in Haitian history, and that is none other than Alexandre Pétion.
Boo, you suck.
Alexandre Pétion, the so-called first president of Haiti. Well, let's get right into it. So, Alexandre Pétion was born April 2nd, 1770 to a rich, wealthy white planter and a mulatto mother. So that would make him a quadroon under the definition of what the French would call him, right? And a quadroon would basically mean that he was 25% black because his mother was a mixed race person, and then she mixed with a white person, and then that made him 25% black. So they would call him a quadroon. And around 1788, Alexandre Pétion, as a youth, was sent to France to go get educated, which is something that they did back in the day with the children of the wealthy planters. They would send them off to France, have them educated, and then they would come back to Haiti. They would come back to Haiti and be some of the plantation owners, right? And so it created a buffer class in Haiti, right? Where you had the rich, wealthy planter, slave driving people, right? And they had the mixed race children who would be the buffer between the African blacks. And so they sent Alexandre Pétion off to France to go get educated, and now he comes back Mr. Smooth, debonair, mulatto person, right? And just to give you a backdrop, before 1791, a lot of mixed race people did not identify with being black. They would call themselves the Jean couleur, or the Jean color people, if I'm pronouncing it wrong. And so they seen themselves as something different from Africans. So when the revolution popped off in 1791, you had different fractions in Haiti that was warring for power, with Africans at the bottom. Mulattoes were not necessarily on the side of Africans. They were on their own side until you had people like Leclerc and people like Rochambeau who came to Haiti, and they were like,
I don't care if you're 25% black, I don't care if you're 75% black, I hate your guts, and you guys are all going to get the same fate as the 100% Negroes.
And that's when you had mixed race people jumping on the side of blacks. Now, going back, you have Alexandre Pétion coming back from France after being educated, becoming a plantation owner himself, right? And having land and having slaves. And then you had the revolution that popped off in 1791, led by Bookman and Fatima, and you had Toussaint, who joined later. Coincidentally, you had the mulatto fraction that ended up fighting against black liberation, okay? And this was actually known as the War of Knives that took place between Toussaint L'Ouverture, Dessalines, Henry Christophe, Alexandre Pétion, Regu, and his band of mulattoes, right? So they end up having a long 13-month battle where Jean-Jacques Dessalines and Toussaint L'Ouverture became victorious, and then the mulattoes got the scramming. I mean, they were out of it. They were like, oh,
Time to leave Haiti.
and they ran back to France, right? Because they lost the war. So they ran back to their French mommies and daddies and got the hell out of Haiti. And Alexandre Pétion was one of those people who left. But here's where the plot thickens. Alexandre Pétion comes back to Haiti in 1802. And he comes back to Haiti under a French expedition. He comes back to Haiti to put Africans in slavery. Yes, this is true. He came back with a French expedition to put Africans back in slavery. I mean, this guy doesn't seem like much of a liberator of black people, but I mean, again, in Haitian culture and Haitian history, I don't know what the heck they're teaching, okay? So he comes back. Then he ends up switching sides later on to join Jean-Jacques Dessalines. When he realized that the French was going to lose, he ended up switching sides and clicking up with Jean-Jacques Dessalines to help win the Battle of Vertières and give Haiti its independence. Here's the kicker. Here's the kicker. He is also the assassin of Jean-Jacques Dessalines. And other mulatto leaders are the assassins of Jean-Jacques Dessalines, right? This is the man that led Haiti to its independence. This mulatto played up under him. Act like he was cool. Act like they were friends. Act like he was all right with what was taking place. And then later on had him assassinated. Side note. I don't want to forget this. Not only is Alexandre Pétion the assassin of Jean-Jacques Dessalines, but after he assassinated him, he actually passed laws stating that if you spoke Jean-Jacques Dessalines' name, you can be imprisoned. Also, do you actually know in Haiti to this day that Jean-Jacques Dessalines and Alexandre Pétion are buried in the same mausoleum?
Et là, ça on regarde là.
Là, c'est lui-même qui mettait reste Dessalines avec Pétion. C'est mausolée ça, c'est lui-même c'est là reste Dessalines avec Pétion.
On continue.
Après président Préval, pas de monde qui jamais pensé à Dessalines encore. Pas de monde qui pense, même lorsqu'on t'a des nègres dit papa Dessalines, menti c'est sous bloc pas de monde qui soucie de Dessalines. Tout nèg ces affaires proches y a réglé, pas de monde qui pense en rien à Dessalines.
What the heck? Continue watching the video. So, after Dessalines is assassinated, you now have a power struggle in Haiti being led by Henry Christophe and Alexandre Pétion. So Alexandre Pétion was ruling in the south and Henry Christophe was ruling in the north. Basically, the south was controlled by the mulattoes who wanted to replicate a French democracy in Haiti, and you had the north that was being ran like a monarchy, where you had Henry Christophe, who was the king, essentially, of the northern part of Haiti. So Haiti was split in half. Here's the part that gets really, really ridiculous, right? And this is where, again, I have to really say I'm not a fan of Alexandre Pétion, is when he starts passing laws about women.
Dessalines' government had a lot of women, and Christophe's government had women. It's after Christophe, with the first mulatto who became president, Pétion, that things turn around. He passed a decree saying that it is forbidden to ask of women, to give to women tasks that make too much demand on their mental and physical capacities. So therefore, from this point on, women are not allowed in a public function,
He starts saying that women aren't in the capacity to do the things that men should do, so women shouldn't have public office, women shouldn't do this, women's hair should be covered. Like, he started passing some real sexist laws. Again, he was educated in France, his father was a white man. You can kind of do the mathematical equation on your own, right? Also, Alexandre Pétion was not much of an original leader. Everything that he did, he merely copied what Jean-Jacques Dessalines had in place, okay? People like to claim Alexandre Pétion was, some type of liberator, that he went to South America and helped free South America, which he did. But in social and historical context, you have to remember Jean-Jacques Dessalines was already doing that, right? He already was accepting people from South America. He accepted Miranda, who was before Simon Boulevard, right? Miranda, who was fighting for independence in South America. So Jean-Jacques Dessalines already had those things in plan. He already was having African Americans escape to Haiti, right? So everything that Alexandre Pétion did, he copied from Jean-Jacques Dessalines. Also, Alexandre Pétion copied the fact that Jean-Jacques Dessalines was having African Americans escape to Haiti, and he was also buying slave ships for $40 for each slave, right? So what Jean-Jacques Dessalines would do is he would go to these pirates and he would say, hey, you guys, get any slave ships, bring them to Haiti, and what we would do is we'll pay you $40 for each enslaved African going to the United States or any other place. Alexandre Pétion just copied everything that Dessalines did, even when it came down to opening the door for African Americans to come for Haiti. Now, just quick little side note right quick. I want to kind of elaborate on African Americans going to Haiti and Haitians going to the United States, right? A lot of times we think, well, my parents are from Haiti, so I guess that my lineage goes back to Haiti by way of Africa. But one of the things that we don't realize is that Africans never stayed still, right? You had Jean-Jacques Dessalines, who was saying, hey, African Americans come to Haiti. You also had Alexandre Pétion, who copied that and said, hey, you guys can come to Haiti as well. And he also wrote in the Constitution that African Americans were welcome here in IET. And so throughout the years, the numbers of how many people have went to Haiti from the continental United States has been sorely misrepresented.
We all know the heroic tales of Harriet Tubman taking enslaved people north to freedom. But I'm curious, even after the Civil War, was there any efforts for formerly enslaved Black Americans to travel south to Haiti, to a free Black nation that was not experiencing the horrible repercussions of Reconstruction after Reconstruction was over?
Right. Yeah. So it's a great question. So first, there's massive U.S. Black migration to Haiti in the decades before the U.S. Civil War. Thousands and thousands go there. And I think we've underestimated the amount that don't return to the U.S., that continue to live their lives in freedom in Haiti.
So we must understand, just because your lineage may trace back to a landmass doesn't mean that you are actually from that landmass. As we know, I'm just going to repeat this again, a lot of African Americans went to Haiti during slavery and after slavery, and you had a lot of Haitians that went to the United States during and after slavery. So we've always had this Atlantic experience going back and forth. But getting back on topic with Alexandre Pétion, now you can kind of see why this guy's not really my favorite, Haitian figure in history. And there's a lot of things that this guy has done in history. I'm just giving you a brief summary of some of the things. But anyway, this guy to me was a personal fail when it comes to Haitian history. Of course, he's done some things in history that can kind of be like, we'll give you a pass. But other things he done as far as like, the sexist laws and a sexist way of thinking, and also allowing French Roman Catholics to come and take over the religion in Haiti and build and do this. And it kind of set Haiti back, like still to this day. Some of the things that the mixed race people, or specifically Alexandre Pétion, initiated in Haiti, right? Like, for example, up until 1994, if you were born outside of Port-au-Prince, because Port-au-Prince was a place specifically for mixed race people, if you were born outside of Port-au-Prince, your birth certificate had peasant written on it. And this was specifically done by the mulattoes, by the mixed race people, because they figured that, we are the cream of the crop, and anybody born outside of Port-au-Prince, which, was a mulatto metropolis at the time, was a peasant. And so some of the effects that the mulattoes, specifically people like Alexandre Pétion, put in place way back in the 1800s, we're still fighting the effects of today. Things like colorism, things like sexism, things like region of where you were born, or your ideology, and even our religious beliefs. And so this is why I give Alexandre Pétion not one of my favorite guys in Haitian history. But Hopefully you enjoyed this video. If you did, give it a thumbs up. Hopefully you learned something new today. Share this video. Until next time, family, think black, stay black, love black, support black, and that's real African black power. Peace.